Hello to everyone who is here with us for the fourth day of the 11th edition of London Kurdish Film Festival online. Today, we have seen 6 films in the theme of war on the screen. We had animations, we had fictions, and we had documentaries. Obviously, war is an important aspect of life and has been for, unfortunately, a long time in Kurdistan. And a lot of the films that are made about war and the conditions of conflicts are documentaries, or at least we in London Kurdish Film Festival would want to receive more documentaries from that region. Documentary filmmakers have been making films and newsreels in conditions of conflict, such as world wars and civil wars, since the early days in film history. Without their work, the world wouldn't have had awareness about what actually goes on in the affected areas and what actually happens to the affected people, either fighters or civilians. In making such films, documentary filmmakers get involved in situations that are not easy for anyone to endure. They face practical filmmaking challenges as well as emotional turbulences. That is not to mention the dangerous and life-threatening situations that they have to endure. Documentary filmmaking remain a vibrant aspect of Kurdish cinema and a vital medium through which light can be shed on the conflicts that have swept across the region. For this panel discussion, we have invited 3 filmmakers, all of whom have experience of making documentary films in different parts of Kurdistan and in conditions of conflict during recent years. Jiar Gol is a Kurdish journalist and documentary filmmaker from Sana. He is a BBC World correspondent covering the Middle East with a focus on Kurdish issues. He has made several documentaries, including The Emblem of Turkey, The Kurdish Problem in 2005, Healthcare 9/11 in 2006, Tale of Two Soldiers in 2010, and The Lost Daughter of Halabja in 2008. Maryam Ashrafi is a Paris-based Iranian photographer filmmaker. In her work, she has had a focus on the situation of the Kurds. As an independent photographer and filmmaker, she has covered the aftermath of wars from Kobani in northern Syria to Sinjar in Iraqi Kurdistan. Her work on Kurdish resistance movements has been the subject of several exhibitions and publications. Her long-term work on Kurdish issues has also driven her to work as a camerawoman in documentaries such as I Am the Revolution, and to direct and shoot her own upcoming documentary in Iraq and Syria. Apo Bazidi is an award-winning filmmaker who has been interested in storytelling and writing since childhood. He was born in eastern Turkey to Kurdish parents. After immigrating to San Francisco, Apo met his mentor, Angelo Ciaffi, who inspired and encouraged him to pursue his passion for a career in film. He graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Film and Television Production from the University of Southern California in 2011. Apo's films are primarily concerned with social issues and the importance of global cultural interactions. His most recent work, Resistance is Life, won 8 festival awards for Best Documentary Feature. Apo believes in making a positive change, and his lifelong motto is be creative and inspire. So, hello to our dear guests, and thank you so much for being here with us today, agreeing to be part of this panel. Hopefully the internet connection everywhere we are, in different countries that we are, will allow us to proceed with this panel, and for our audience and us to benefit from your experiences. I will try not to speak so much, so I'm just going to throw a question, and hopefully you will be able to share your experience with us. Also, I want to tell to our audience that towards the end of this panel, please send us your questions in the comment section on Facebook or in the comment section on YouTube, which are the places where this panel is being live broadcast. So do ask questions from the panel members. So the first question and the issue that I want you to share with us what you think about is just the nature of going to conditions of conflict and making films in those areas. What difference does it make to go to the heart of the conflict? And why not make films from distance, especially considering that nowadays civilians shoot a lot of footage on their phones, and these footage are available on social media as soon as they are shot? why not just sit in London, Paris, or in US where you are, and just collect this footage and edit them and make a report or make a film. And I want to start with you, Giar, because I remember very well the report you did in Shangal in the mountains during the siege of the area by ISIS. Tell us why you felt the need to go to the heart of the conflict, break the siege, and make a report there. And thank you.
Thank you, and hello to everyone from anywhere, everywhere, watching us. I think don't forget, any assignment you go, you really feel the necessity to send the information to the rest of the world. And you just give an example of going to Shangal in 2014, in August, actually, the same month. I think at the time we knew all, Shangal was surrounded by ISIS and thousands of people. They were in the verge of massacre. And I think for me, first of all, we were trying really to find a way to get there, and we were lucky to get an aid helicopter and get on board and allow us to go there. And even for a few minutes, we get there. I mean, making film and reporting breaking news is very different. Making film is you have to wait there, and actually pretty much you sit and let people live in front of your camera, or event evolve in front of your eyes, collect your information, interview people, and in the end of the day, when you come back, you sit in your editing room, you try to make sense of the story and create some work which is documentary, and plus obviously adding music, all the stuff. But when you are in a place like Shangal at that time, I think my entire aim was, how can we be the voice for these people? Otherwise, no one would hear their voice, their plight, what is happening there. And at that moment, of course, I wasn't aware what is going on, but the only thing I was aware, we feed our footage back to London, and then it was picked up by entire broadcasts around the world. And also, it wasn't just about us as a BBC, because BBC is like a main channel. It was picked up by CNN, by other broadcasters, and then in the next few days, we saw actually American came in and sent air support. Otherwise, ISIS could have been easily run over Erbil as well. I mean, what I remember on 8th of March when I entered Erbil, I realized many people were leaving the hotel while I was just checking in. And I remember there was an American oil workers in Erbil in Rotana Hotel. He told me, I'm get the hell out of here. This is too dangerous. They are just 20, 30 kilometers far from Erbil. And then actually I was there to setting up pretty much with this iPhone. I'm talking to you to setting up my life. And I fed entire BBC machine from the local station in Plymouth all the way to BBC's Newsnet mainstream. I think our main goal at the time was obviously tell the story what's happening. So otherwise, these people will be massacred. And you cannot wait. You cannot wait for even an hour. If I could go down on the mountain, actually, and just feed live, most definitely I would do that. And then actually the next day we went to Rojava, and through a corridor was opened by Yapaga and Yapaja. Actually, they were gracious enough to let us in that narrow corridor. We went up while the entire world were talking about what can we do for these people. They were already, actually, they lost a lot of their members. They opened up a corridor, and they were already taking people, Yazidi people, down to the Camp Noros in Rojava, and then transfer them back to Kurdistan. But anyways, I mean, to answer your question, absolutely, when you're covering a breaking news, is far different than documentary.
Yeah, thank you. Apo, it's the same question to you as well. What is the importance for the filmmaker to physically go to the condition of conflict, where something terrible perhaps is taking place, for them to make a film? And please touch on your own experience as well.
Absolutely. I think Giar has mentioned it has explained it really well, and from his experiences as well. The difference between filmmaking and news is the emotions. We tell stories to actually connect with people, and the only way you can connect with people is the emotions that you're going to transcend. And if you don't feel those emotions, there's no way you can have an impact on people. So going in a conflict zone, more than actually showing what it is, it's actually showing what it feels like. Because, you know, every news channel could go and, you know, do a 2 to 5 minutes coverage of conflict, you know, zones, and information is very available these days. If you go on Google, you can find anything. It's the biggest library on the earth. But what's missing is the emotional contact. It's the emotional journey of the people in the region, emotional journey of the filmmaker, because we all get connected by storytelling because it affects us at an emotional level. So for me, to make the decision to go to, you know, the war zone or conflict zone, wherever you want to call, it was the commitment that I wanted to have the experience of the emotions of the people, what it is feel like to live under those circumstances, what the world is missing. And, you know, when you humanize a story, it's more than a coverage, it's more than news, it humanizes, it transcends globally, so people get to understand the story and conflict from the ground, because you are showing what is actually happening with the people's life and under the such circumstances. You know, I spent a year and a half on the Turkish-Syrian border during siege of Kobani. You know, like spend time volunteering in the refugee camps, then went, you know, crossed the border to the front lines. I wanted to be able to show people how much resilience, how much beauty, how much culture, how much sacrifice, how much life is among these people. They're not just like, oh, look, the victims of the war, or look, the bad, you know, bad guys are ISIS. Let's show that. No, it's like how much we are same, how much they're human, how much this situation can happen to any of us, you know, in any part of the world. If we don't humanize stories, if we don't humanize emotions, and if we don't transcend emotions globally, there's no way people can understand. And, you know, as Jar said, to become the voice, because I think as a filmmaker, we have the power and we have the duty and we have the, I would say, mission to be that person to actually show what those people are going through, rather than just, you know, collecting footage and saying this is the data, this is the information. I think any one of us can actually access that information with the you know, social media or internet. But what's important to actually show the people's emotion and show how those people are just like anyone else around the world, and how it's, you know, how it's affecting their life, and how we can actually make a change or contribute or be aware of what's going on.
Thank you, Apo. Mariam, I'm going to raise almost a similar issue, and so in your opinion, what takes you personally to areas of conflicts for your own documentary photography and documentary filmmaking? And also, that does it matter to be sympathetic to the cause that is taking place in that area? For example, if you go back to the Middle East, is this something that you would do for about other parts of the world as well? Or is it specifically the area that you come from that you personally feel attached to go and make documentary work?
Hello, everyone, and thanks again for this great panel discussion. I'm glad that Apo and Gio covered the first question, what you mentioned perfectly. I just want to add a small point to that, because you mentioned why go there, why, because the local people, they actually do film with their own cameras these days and everything. I just want to make a small point on the fact that, of course, it's really important to have their voice, because they're living in that situation and they are the one who can portray everyday life much better than us. Even if, for example, we try to go and live there for a month or so thinking that we are spending enough time, it's not enough. So I think the important part is just adding to what Dave mentioned, is to make a balance with what we see from on Facebook and Twitter, on every kind of news channels, and with the films and documentaries, which are going deeper and deeper and trying to touch on some point that maybe the local people, because they're living in that situation, it becomes normal for them. So they don't see it the way as many people with the fresh eyes would go and see. For the question you mentioned, I think my main interest is started as a personal experience that I wanted to go and see Kurdistan as a place that my father actually smuggled out of Iran to there. And we heard a lot about the Kurdish people. And my journey actually extended more and more when the resistance in Rojava happened and I experienced the conflict and war zones for the first time. And then I realized that every time I go there, I come back with more questions. So it actually triggered the next trip. So since then, I'm trying to go every year almost to see what the changes are happening and how is the situation are improving.
So in your case, personal connection and sympathetic aspect of it was quite important.
Yeah, I don't think the word sympathy is right. I think we should be more concerned with empathy in a way to understand the situation and feel connected, but not to become too sympathize in a way that we don't see the whole story as we should see as a filmmaker or journalist.
Okay, thank you. And Jiar, for your case, I know as a journalist, you go to many different parts of the world to make your own reports and your own films about anything that's happening in those areas. But is there something about Kurdistan and about the Middle East that you personally feel attached to? And does that make you kind of inspire you to make more documentaries in that region? I don't know. Have you made films in other parts of the documentary films?
I think actually the subject, particularly for documentary, you choose normally is close to your heart. It is something passionately you believe in, and or there is a subject you believe it is true, and you set on a journey to prove what you believe, pretty much. Maybe in the end of the film, rarely somebody come out to say, you know, I was wrong and something happened in front of my camera during this journey. But I want to tell you, actually, for information, I started as a documentary filmmaker in Canada. And actually, the main reason I think I would say I went to this valley to start it was the story of Leila Zana. It was my first film, and I bought a secondhand camera. I remember the first time in 2002, I went to Ankara. I didn't miss any of her retrial. So, I mean, that was, of course, if you say, yes, it was because of my ethnic background as a Kurdish, yes, it was something close to my heart. But it doesn't mean if I come across a story, a human story, as interesting as that, if it's happening in China or it's happening in Bosnia, which I have done many stories like that, actually for news in different parts of the world. If it's South Africa, I really treat the story the same. But of course, when the story is, as I said, close to your heart, you know what is going on there in and out. And obviously your mission is, okay, right now I am living in diaspora. My aim, I always say, I'm not preaching to converter. I am normally making film and report for those people who disagree with me. I am trying to educate them and entertain, educate, as I said before, empower my own people and also actually educate the rest of the world. What is happening there? What is going on there? And I think for the Kurdish people, they don't need actually people to be sympathetic toward them. They just need people go there and tell the truth. Telling the truth actually, you exactly shed a light on their life and their struggle and the oppression is going on in all four parts of Kurdistan. So for me, as I said, no, absolutely. I have a story I did in Bosnia. I love it as much as I did a story in Shingal and other places. No, it's all, we are in the same globe, but as a human being, we all connected together. I think it's very important. Actually, we, as Mariam said, we do not overwhelmed by our emotion. And I remember actually when I was in Shingal, I couldn't hold back. I was hiding my own tears in front of my colleagues because I felt it's not professional for a journalist. I'm not there to cry. I'm not there to say, oh, what's happening. No, I was there to report what is happening in hopes of international community open their eyes and do something about it. So that's why I think when we do particularly documentary, it's quite different. And I personally choose a subject which is close to my heart. And I remember I worked for those people who are watching from Canada. I worked with National Film Board of Canada. I worked with CBC Canada. At the time, actually, one of the main reasons I could work with them was because I was an immigrant, because I was a Kurdish, because I was second language. And actually those some people may see it as a weakness. Actually, it was an asset for me, helped me to get a grant, to get commission my work, and actually start my first film. And that's how I started. As a matter of fact, 10 years later, I joined BBC. So I would tell to those people who are watching, actually, I think being a Kurd, being Iranian, being Middle Eastern, being from Turkey, from other places, is an asset for you in the country you are residing. Actually, it could help you to promote your story and commission it and go to the field and film your story.
Exactly. Don't let that hold you back, basically. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. Apo, similar area, similar question to you as well as some other aspects. So, for example, your film "Resistance is Life" is that beautiful film, documentary film that you made in the refugee camps. Is something, if I'm correct, that is close to your heart, obviously, and it's kind of around the area that you are from. I'm not sure. So tell us a little bit about your own human connection with the topic, with the subject, and also a little bit about the process of making the film. Did you have a script when you went there, or did you go there and then the idea presented itself to you?
Yeah. So, as Jia said, things that are close to our heart makes us move forward, makes us take more risks or challenges, because it's something in you. There's something that is tingling your heart and your brain. It's rooted in you. So when I saw what was going on the news in summer of 2014 with the invasion of Rojava and attack by ISIS, and seeing those images of children and families and women, I wanted to do something. Rather than making a documentary, I really wanted to go there and help out. So my initial departure was actually went to there volunteer. So I didn't tell even my loved ones, family, nobody. So I packed overnight. I just went up there, start volunteering in the refugee camps, helping out as much as I can. After my second week, as a filmmaker, also I was documenting my journey, taking photos, trying to figure out what's happening, and working in the food shelter, distributing food to families. And then one day, Doctors Without Borders came, and then they needed a translator because I spoke 3 languages. So I was like, okay, I can help them. So we went to the camps, giving vaccines to the children. And as you saw the film, I was trying to catch the sunset over a tent. Our superhero, Evelyn, she approached the camera and she said, "Do you want me to give you an interview? Do you want me to talk to the camera?" I was like, okay, let's see what this little girl is going to say, just like any other kid, who wants to say something, be goofy, or just, cheer up. So the moment Evelyn started telling her story, as you know in the film, that was the turning point for me to say, oh my God, this is the reality of children. This is my childhood. This is a repeating consequences, unfortunately, that is taking place in my country, in my culture. I am facing it again, growing up in Eastern Turkey, not maybe to the degree of this type of catastrophe, but under the war zone and under circumstances of oppression, I was witnessing my childhood, and it started tingling my heart. It started, hurting. It starts giving me hope. All those emotions kicked back in, and I was like, okay, maybe there's something I can do that is greater than what I'm here doing physically. Maybe I can reach out. Maybe I can bring this voice out into the world. And I think one thing also I want to add to Giar's comments, we as filmmakers, diaspora filmmakers especially, the biggest advantage that we have, we understand the culture, the language, the human connection of Westerners or other parts of the world, because we have been exposed to the different cultures and languages. So we know how to tell stories in a way that these people can understand. When you ask, a lot of people, yes, locally are filming, documenting, telling their stories. but there's a degree of cultural and linguistic differences for the others to understand. And I think that's the key element of diaspora filmmakers becoming a bridge between our culture, our conflict, our cause, and telling it in a language, in a way that they can understand, because they have never seen and lived or experienced such things. So it's hard for them to comprehend. It's hard for them to get connected. So we wanted to make sure these people can get connected, because that's where the impact happened. And that, I think, it is the emotional part. So, making Resistance's life was challenging, obviously, just like any other conflict zone. Lack of equipment, electricity, all that stuff. But I think as a filmmaker, documentary filmmaker, I think you are prepared for all these things. I think when you do the jump, you should know you are going to face hardship, failure, disappointment. But I think one thing that you must keep in mind, it is how you cannot fail to your emotions, how you cannot give up, because you're going to face moments and you know crises that it's going to hurt. It's going to definitely take you to places that you've never been, and you have to be strong enough to say, how can I move forward, how can I not fail and give up? So for me, I think the biggest challenge was spending a year and a half on the camps and in the front line. Was like, its technical difficulties was there, but it wasn't the issue. The issue was like staying true to your vision, your story, and knowing that you have a greater cause of being a bridge, bringing the story of your people, the people in need, in a way that the rest of the world can, identify with and understand. And I think that's the key for us, to make sure that we have the mission, we have the duty, we can make a change, because we know how to be the bridge and mediator between different cultures and languages, and to tell our stories. If we don't tell our stories, who's going to tell our stories? There's no other way that anyone else can tell our stories better than us, within the parameters of a global language.
All right, thank you. And so you mentioned that since you come from diasporic experience, you know how to speak to the Westerners. So your film reflects that reality quite well for the Westerners. I want to know about, so did your characters from the refugee camp also watch the film? How was their experience? How did they receive it?
Yeah.
Does your film also speak to those people?
Yes, I think that was the most nerve-wracking thing that I had to witness after, Kobani was still, after the siege was over, but still, nothing was as, normal and livable place. So we played in, America, Europe, blah, 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 everywhere, festivals, winning, getting awards, everything's good. And then it took a year to actually screen the film in Kobani. And that was the moment that I couldn't go to sleep for 24 hours, because my heart is beating. It's the story of the people that I have shared with the world, but they haven't seen it, and the character hasn't seen it. She's been living in the camps for 4.5 years. And at this, I think it was second Rojava Film Festival that they held in 7 different cities in 3 cantons. And then when they say, it won the best documentary and everyone loved it and everyone applauded it, that was the I think the biggest win and the biggest release for me, to be able to say, okay, I was able to, make sure that their stories came across as it was, in a way it will make them happy and it will bring their message to the rest of the world. And that was the most nerve-wracking experience that I ever had.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Mariam, so I'm going to slightly shift now to the ethical aspect of making documentaries in conflict zones. So foreign filmmakers who go to a conflict condition to make films often have the means to quickly get out of that situation, while the rest of the people who they have no other option but to remain in the horror of the war. How does this affect the ethics of filmmaking? And how do you feel about that yourself? I know that you're not exactly a foreign filmmaker when you are in that area. You are from that area. But you do have the means to kind of get out in a way. I mean, that means might be financial, might be the passport, might be anything. But touching on your own experience and how you see, how you felt. Also, I want you to, if you can, give a more general aspect, comment about generally this aspect of making documentaries in conflict zones.
I think that freedom that you mentioned, that people like me, we have, that we decide to go on a stay for 1 year, we decide to go on a stay for a week. That freedom, it is great, of course, it gives us some ability to some extent, but at the same time, it put a pressure on me that how the local people, how would these people see me? I never want them to get a feeling that I'm there to, in a way, to use their situation to take what I grasp, and the moment I feel I had enough, I would leave. So being aware of the fact that how much power the camera has and how much we can use that in a way to be selective or not selective in what we choose, try not to only portray our point of view, but to understand what these people need to actually say to the rest of the world. But if they were in my shoes, these are the things that I keep reminding myself whenever I'm there, I'm working there. And in a way, trying to engage them as well. And the fact that I'm not a Kurd myself, so I wouldn't say I'm a foreigner, but I always tell them that the language is the biggest barrier for me. So I try to engage them not as a fixer or translator, but someone who would help me to be more connected to the community in a way to stick to those ethics, if you may say, and not actually involve them. And I tell them, okay, I'm on always work alone as one camera with the sound and everything in the documentary I'm working. And that I would use as kind of an excuse to involve them more, in a sense, for them not to feel that I'm a foreigner who can go easily whenever I want, and they would be left with nothing in a sense that they felt like, okay, she took away part of my story, and what's happening next? I want them to feel that she helped me to actually pass this message to the world.
Yeah, thank you. Jiar, I mean, this is the question of ethics is something that I want you to also tell us what you think about, and also if there is if we can encourage, or if there are documentary films made by the locals themselves that perhaps maybe reflect the situation better than an outsider's gaze. And so generally tell us what you think about locals making films about their own situation, and also the ethics of making films about situation from an outsider point of view.
I think the best documentaries are shot by non-professional, in my opinion. Those people who, for the first time, they pick up with their iPhone or with their small camera, they start actually pretty much documenting the life happening in front of their eyes. I think those kind of things, they are so raw and intimate. It could, if you bring them back, those footages, put it together properly, it could make a good documentary. And I think I just want to pick up on something Mariam said. I totally understand the anxiety and anguish you're going to is somewhere, these people might be in a matter of 24 hours run over by ISIS, for example, really affecting you. But don't forget, you are not Mother Teresa, or we are not. I mean, the reality is we always say we are there because we can't change anything. We are there to get this story out in hopes of make some change and their voices to be heard, as I said earlier. I think for a lot of time, that's a kind of ethical questions after each trip we went to conflict zone. We have it when you come back. I remember Aziz, the 8-year-old boy in Rojava, when his family actually ran away from Shingal, they left him because it was an animalic instinct. They have to make decision between the healthy one and the one who was handicapped. He couldn't walk. He could hold all the family back and ISIS get them, or take those people who could walk and leave him somewhere. Anyways, that was something I think not just my team, entire team, we were 2-3 teams from BBC. We went when we heard He died in a hospital in Rojava, 8-year-old boy, because of the sun. It really affected all of us. I mean, that's why many of us suffer from PTSD, post-traumatic disorder, because we see so many things. We can't do much about it. And sometimes, actually, we take those images, those brutality with us for the rest of our lives. And a lot of us, we come home, we feel, you know, this is nothing to do with our family. We don't even discuss it. We don't go for counseling. And that's why you see actually many prominent journalists or filmmakers who witness brutality or witness misery of others, precisely because you feel guilty. You said, I could make it out, they couldn't. And that guilt stays with you for the rest of your life. And obviously, of course, but coming back to your question about those people, I think definitely those people who are in the front line, who are witnessing something others don't have access, definitely they could be used. But again, I just want to, I don't know if I have time to come back to this issue or not. I would strongly suggest those people who are new filmmaker, don't think of the best camera. Story is important, the content is important. And also, don't think the documentary must be 20 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour. Less is more. I mean, if you can tell the story in 3 minutes, in 2 minutes, just like those characters in Twitter, believe it or not, more people will see it. So the important is to send the message. The important is to create story which could attract attention and, you know, educate others about your plight, about your cause. And doesn't have to always be about war. Doesn't have to always be about our misery, the oppression. There is so many different good things also happening in our region. We could talk about life to encourage people, to empower people. You know, between this kind of aspect of life, we could also address other issues. But solely, I'm saying this because I've seen so many Kurdish films in the past. Possibly I was one of them. Many years ago, I have done numbers of those films. We just focus on the misery of our people, but there is a lot of life in that region. We could focus on it, and then, you know, between those lines, tell our own story, our own struggle as well.
Thank you, Apo. If you like to touch on the same topic of the ethics and yeah, other aspects around this issue. Also, so Jiar mentioned the emotional burden of, and also Mariam also mentioned emotional burden, and also more specifically PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome disorder. Is there for these documentary filmmakers who, and specifically here I'm talking about the ones who go from the outside world to the region, and when they come back, is there a network of support, emotional support or psychological support? Is there anything like that? And also this question, how do you basically emotionally survive such an experience? And also the ethics of, again, the question of ethics.
I mean, ethical filmmaking is by itself is very challenging. It is the proximity of you to your story. You know, a lot of us wanted to tell stories, but what is our proximity and our connection to our story? As Jiar mentioned, story is the key. You know, equipment, technicality, the conditions is part of it. But it is, what's most important is like, what is the story that you want to tell, and why is it important to you? I think if you can answer this question, you already will check the box in a confident way that you can say, I am approaching this story ethically, or my approach, my perspective, my vision is going to fulfill needs and also the help of the story. For me, I think one of the biggest challenges that I had during making my film was how much I can be one of those people, how much that I am willing to give up from myself to live every moment with those people. How much can I be them to tell the story just like them? So that was my ethical question, because at the end of the day, yes, a year and a half later, I left. But for me, to be able to feel the emotional connection and sincerity, asking myself, have I done enough sacrifice and enough of telling their story from their perspective. I think it is a very personal journey, and it's very subjective, and it's going to vary from every aspect of life and filmmaking. Not only conflict zone, you can be making any other film, but it is the question that you should ask yourself: what is my proximity to the story, and why am I telling this story? Why is it so important for me to tell the story? I think that will address a lot of answers in your life as a filmmaker. And I think GR mentioned an amazing thing. When I came back, I think for 3 months I didn't want to socialize with anyone. I didn't want to talk to my loved ones, friends, family. It was a chaotic moment in my life. I think the only reason we tell stories, perhaps, but maybe that's our meditation. That's how we can sort of release those emotions and share. Because if you don't share those emotions, it's gonna stay in you and it's gonna hurt you. But I think as filmmakers, the reason we tell the stories and the reason we feel the need of, I think we find meditation, we find release in that, because it is the moment you open up to the world. Look what I have witnessed. Look what I've seen. Look at what I shared. And I think that helps us personally to, sort of let go. Maybe not 100%, because there's always going to be the parts that is, broken. And you can never fix those broken parts. You can patch it, but I feel like by telling stories, by putting yourself out there, by being vulnerable, you are trying to heal yourself. There's no such a, when I came back, nobody was like, oh my God, sit and tell us what you have witnessed or what it is like to be there. It was more than anything just like a surface conversation, pretty much. And I think for us as storytellers, the reason we tell stories because we wanted to actually heal ourselves. We wanted to share the moments that because it's part of our lives. We live those moments. It's not like we're capturing, we're there capturing, but nothing affects us emotionally. It all goes in the camera. No, absolutely no. Everything that we capture, and probably the most important things that we capture, the more impactful things we capture as filmmakers, storytellers, documentary filmmakers, are not in the camera. Mm-hmm. I think it's captured by our eyes and our heart. Mm-hmm. And it's so hard to, transcend them. It's so hard to, bring those out. And we are trying to, justify that by telling our stories at its best.
Thank you. So, Mariam, as we know, the many journalists witness, as also Apo mentioned, witness horrific situations. Many journalists lose their lives, and many journalists see their colleagues lose their lives in front of their eyes. How should you survive the emotional burden of that kind of situation? How do you? This is because it's a psychological burden. It can result in major troubles, mental issues. How do you survive that kind of situation? And also, this is also a question for both you and GR. And also, this can be your advice and suggestion for other young filmmakers who want to go to war zones, conflict zones, and make documentary films. And inevitably, they are going to witness situations that are not very pleasant. So how do you survive that emotional burden?
I think Apo has mentioned good points on this part, but the fact is many journalists still feel that if they come back and they publicly acknowledge the fact that they have been affected, they're going to be considered as weak, or so they try to hide all that emotions and problems, and that would cause the PTSD to go deeper and deeper, and then they reach to the point that there is no cure in a way. So the fact that we understand that we are human as well. I mean, no one says that as a journalist you won't get kind of impacted by any of these situations that you would see. So if we accept the fact that we have the right to feel like that as well, and when we come back, try to publicly talk about it. Of course, it won't be necessary with the loved ones or the friends, because they won't understand, in a sense. Not that they don't want to, but it's normal. So the good point is, I think is during the last 22 years ago, PTSD within the journalists has been accepted more than before. Before, they presumed that only the fighters and the soldiers would actually suffer from this. And now that is open within the kind of psychological level, that the journalists can actually go and seek help, that actually opened more doors to the people who feel like they need to talk, to actually let it out. And then they would realize they're not alone. And the process of recovery must be, of course, much faster in a sense. But for some journalists, they also feel like they need to go back, keep going back to the same conflict zone and the situation and pick up another film. And in a way, they kind of hide from one problem behind the other ones and not solving it. So I think it's different between all the people. You just have to listen to yourself and see, how would I feel better now? I mean, I can give a personal experience. What has pushed me to work on my current documentary is an experience I had in Rojava in 2017. And unfortunately, someone close to me stepped on an IED and lost his life. And everyone told me, you have to come back to Paris now. If you stay there, you're going to actually suffer. And I said, no, this is the time I need to stay here and live with these people, because they understand this more. They all live with the problem of IEDs and landmines into the everyday life. So they know what is the problem. And that was the time that I thought I can be cured by staying in the place. But of course, at some point, I had to leave. And then I realized I need to put all this suffering and trauma into my work in a way to try to survive, and not to stick in that kind of process of recovering, which I couldn't see any other way, rather than kind of finding other journalists or other people who had the same experience. And within these interviews that I did with the film, I think I found those kind of healing for myself. That cure that I was searching for, I found it there. So that's what I'm saying, is different for every people, and you just have to dig in and find what is your own kind of personal way to deal with it.
Thank you, for sharing this with us. Yes, yes.
I just want to add, actually, I have witnessed many people actually in front line. They're rushing to front line. Sometimes I have seen actually news crew, people actually, they even sometimes running faster than Peshmerga or other forces. The reality is we are not there to be, we risk your life. I don't know, we say no life, no story worth a life. And don't forget, if you are getting killed in a 2 years later, 1 year later, most likely most people other than your family wouldn't remember you. So when you are going to conflict zone, be mindful of your own security, and also don't put others, your crew, your fixer, in danger, because if something happened to them, when you come back, it could haunt you for the rest of your life. Because we have to be careful. I mean, things happen when you are in conflict zone. A bullet, maybe I ask my cameraman, let's wait, get one shot, and then a bullet hit him. I mean, always we should be mindful when we go to conflict zone. We're really extra careful. Although I personally have been, I would say, an inches away from my death. And anytime, as Mariam said, I said, this is my last time, I'm going to go back. I don't come back. But when I come back, I'm thinking on my next assignment. We call it adrenaline rush. So we get, somehow you are addicted to this excitement. Some people with the sport, that's true. It's the reality. But I most definitely, I would tell those people who are thinking of become a journalist, first of all, working in conflict zone, in my opinion, in terms of storytelling, is much easier, because whatever happening there in the conflict zone is very interesting. It's difficult to make film in London, in the city of London, because how can I make a story? But there it's easy. But also you have to be mindful of your own safety and security. Don't become the story. You are there to tell the story.
Thank you so much, Yar. We have a question from Barbat. Okay. Isn't getting the story out, as Kaveh Golestan once put it, recording the truth, part of the change you are talking about? how would things change without recording the truth? So, as Kaveh example, recording the truth is part of the change, isn't it? So that's, I think I don't know who this is directed to, perhaps GR. And how would things change without recording the truth?
It is a very philosophical question. I don't know how to answer it. I'm not a philosopher, but I think that telling the truth, obviously, it must be the ultimate goal for all of us. And as I said earlier on in the first question, when we are sitting on a journey to, particularly in documentary, we believe in a truth. We believe in the truth. We have done our homework. We have done our research. We believe something happening and this story needs to be told. That's why we even sometimes when we choose interviewees, and we know exactly what they say most of the time. We most likely, we have already actually researched about their characters, what they believe, what kind of opinion they have. That's why when you go there, as I said, I mean, documentary is quite different than journalism. Journalism is there to tell everyone's views. You know, X says this, Y says this, and you as an audience decide who was right, who was wrong. But documentary is quite different. You add a lot of element to it, as Apo said, emotional. You become artistic. You use music. You use every sense to advance your story, to bring it to life, what's happening. But obviously, I mean, telling the truth, most definitely, it must be the core of the story. And one more thing, I mean, in documentary, do not set up things, just document it as it is. That let people live in front of your camera.
Okay, thank you. We are gradually reaching the end of the panel. I would like every member to share with us final thoughts and also any advice that you have for young documentary filmmakers, young or not young, it doesn't matter. Documentary filmmakers who want to make films in conflict conditions.
You're making us look old, my friend, by saying what's your opinion, what's your suggestion for young people?
Exactly, it doesn't matter. So, yeah, any advice and also your final thoughts, and also how to stay safe in conflict conditions, how to stay live, how to also stay on the ethical side of filmmaking, and just anything that you want to share with us as as we are reaching the final moments. Apo, I'm asking this from you, and go around.
All right, I just want to jump in. I just want to say, tell the stories that matters to you the most, that is close to your heart. And I think, like, going to any conflict or, difficult places, also bear in mind the lives that you're putting in danger to tell your story. Of course, you are putting yourself into telling the story, but bear in mind the people on the ground who are willing to help you, who are willing to take the risk for you to tell your story. Bear in mind you're putting them in danger as well. So when we are out there, it shouldn't be all about us. It should be all about togetherness and telling the story from your bottom of your heart. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Apo. Mariam.
Well, I agree with Apo 100%. And just adding to that point is the fact that don't let the challenges of this work get you down, because I work as a freelancer, and there was many times that I said, okay, that's it, I give up, because no one believes in this story the way I do, so it means it's not good. If you believe in something and you did it, there is a need for it, and there are the audience, so just don't give up and keep going.
Thank you, Mariam. Gia, your final thoughts as well.
I think I would say access. When you choose a story, you make sure you have an access. And that's why many times we say, actually, we choose a story, it's close to our heart. We know the story, we have connection there, and we can actually access to those people. And also when you understand the culture, their sensitivity, their vulnerability, and they see you one of their own, they might open up much easier to someone else, which does come to this conclusion. Do the story, you are more comfortable with. And one more thing, I will repeat it again, do not think of long documentary. It must not be 10 minutes, 50 minutes. If you can tell a story in 5 minutes, do it. And also, please look for more positive story. Bring out a lot of positive story, encourage people, empower young generation. Life is not just about misery. Yes, there is a lot of misery we have to address, but we have to be very creative, in a creative way, tell our cause, tell our plight, but in the same time show a little bit taste of life in it.
Thank you so much, Yar, and thank you so much to the panel. That was really great. I really enjoyed learning about your experiences. And also thank you so much to everyone who is watching the panel at the moment, our audience, and also anyone who will be watching this video later on. The videos that we share, our panels, our masterclasses, and every film that we screen live will be available individually on our YouTube channel for you to watch. So subscribe to our YouTube channel. And also make sure you follow the festival. This was the 4th day of the festival. There are 6 more days to go, full of very interesting, beautiful short films about Kurdish people and the Kurdish question. Thank you so much, the panel. It was great talking to you, and I hope to see you soon in person. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.
به کیف خوشی تماشا بکنیم.
Lkff launched in 2001. It is the biggest festival of its kind, showcasing films that are produced by Kurdish directors or include themes related to the Kurdish people, created by Kurdish or non-Kurdish directors for UK audiences. So we produced 10 film festivals since 2001. We need to protect the Kurdish arts and culture because this is our outlet, our legacy, our way to claim the narrative back to our own hands. We hold a responsibility to support Kurdish filmmakers and be that platform where these stories can be recognized and celebrated. To be the platform that can bring the tools and opportunities to aid filmmakers to begin and complete their future projects. We want to fairly represent every region of Kurdistan and diversity of the Kurdish people worldwide.
We are a group of volunteers who try to bring Kurdish films from all around the world together. These can be documentaries, fiction, animations, and these can be short or feature-length films. These are vitally important and culturally very significant films. With your help, we will be able to expand this platform and to become more efficient and with a wider reach.
So, what does the future look like for Lkff? We're looking to use your support to fund the next stage in Kurdish cinema. We want to develop a project referred to as the Kurdish National Film Archive. This will host all Kurdish cinema available for you all throughout the year so that you don't have to wait for the next film festival to get your dose of Kurdish films. The next part of our funding we want to allocate towards having a studio for the Lkff team, which we haven't had for the last 19 years of the festival. We also want to use that space as a venue for our masterclasses, our workshops, and give that kind of tools and education for our future filmmakers to be able to use that when they make their projects.
Lastly, we would like to provide paid opportunities for work at this festival. And for that very reason, we want to be able to pay our volunteers what they deserve. And so part of the funds will be used to attract a wider audience and to be able to expand our reach to other parts of the UK and the world. Because every year we have work that requires specialized services such as translators, graphic designers, web developers, illustrators, videographers and marketers. We want to promote collaboration and expand networking opportunities.
We ask your support because we want to better this festival and bring the most inclusive platform available for everyone. Help us achieve the future of Lkff. We want you to be the part of this ever-growing community of film lovers and filmmakers. Thank you.